Are the QBs dropping in best ball, particularly on underdog? That's what we're going to look at today. I've been reviewing drafts every day, as you know, looking at the data, seeing who's rising, who's falling, analyzing what I'm doing. And one thing I've started to notice, or at least feel like, is that QBs might be falling. So what did I do? I ran the data specifically for QBs, looking at them, seeing if they're falling or not. And we're going to talk about, are they falling, how they're falling, what does that mean for the teams? And we're going to analyze some of our teams and see how we might change things up as the market changes. Let's get into it. First off, let's just look at the data. I know that's what we want to look at probably the most. And here is some data that I've run. First off, I have here QBs at the top. I also did it for running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. We'll talk about that just a bit. And I ran it for yesterday, 625, and for basically 2 months ago on 5/1/26. I wanted to see essentially over the last 2 months, have things changed for the quarterback position? And the short answer is yes, they have. The long answer is a little more nuanced, and maybe we'll try to break that down as best we can. So first off, when it comes to the top 12 QBs, it has changed a little bit. They've dropped by a little over one pick overall on average, going from 71.125 on 5/1 to 72.36 on 6/25. So not a huge drop over the last 2 months over the top quarterbacks. That being said, there is a more significant drop on the next 12 quarterbacks, 13 to 24, over the last 2 months, going from 117.3 to 121.43. And then the last bit of quarterbacks, it's kind of the same, 205 to 6.55, hasn't changed much from there. So big change, or a significant change, at least I think, in the quarterback grouping of these middle tier, 13 to 24. Now, why is that happening? And my theory as to why it was happening was I felt like maybe wide receivers and running backs were getting pushed up the boards, like getting condensed a little bit, like the ones that people like the most. And so I wanted to run the same type of formulas for the other positions, looking at the top 24 running backs, the top 36 wide receivers, and the top 12 tight ends. Essentially looking at like breaking down by starting groups, and then a second group of backups that are the same size tier for both running back, wide receiver, tight end. And what I found here is that similar to basically the top tier players aren't changing a whole lot over the first however many rounds that is. You can see again for running backs 26.1, 26.21. So falling like a hair, if that. For wide receivers, 38.69, 38.29, raising up a hair. And then tight ends, a little bit more, a whole pick from 85.12 to 86.24. And I think we can feel that with some of those tight ends that are a little bit later, kind of like your Harold Fannons kind of falling down the board a bit. Now, when you look at the second tier, though, of running backs and wide receivers, you're going to see some movement here from 108 to 106.7, so a pick and a third, and from 130 to 127, almost three picks, like 2 2/3 picks or so, like 2 2/3 picks or so from there. They're rising for wide receivers. And so I think it's the rising of the running backs and the rising of the wide receivers that's pushing down the tight ends a tad, and then pushing down the tight ends a tad as well. And I want to look at this essentially round by round and see if I can make more sense of it. And you can see here, round by round, I got color coded for a round where like they lost a player in that grouping, and then green, sorry, where they like gained an extra player in that grouping. So when you look at QBs, the first column here, I know it's not labeled, is 625. The second column is 5/1. So the more recent and then the old data. You can see that QBs, round 8 lost one QB since 5/1. So there's only 3 instead of 4. Round 9 lost 2 QBs. So essentially like 1 from 8 fell down to 9, or most likely, and then 2 from 9 fell down further into 10 here. So you can see now there's 4 here instead of 2 in round 10. There's 2 instead of 1 in round 11. And then even around 12 and 14, we're losing more quarterbacks, going from 4 to 3, and then from 2 to 0. And you can kind of think of what names those most likely are in a lot of cases, especially in these late groups here, right? Like Jacoby Brissett's probably out of this group now, and then I don't know if this is like Aaron Rodgers Rising or something like that. Maybe we can look and see, or maybe this is Aaron Rodgers Rising. I don't have his ADP memorized exactly, but Jacoby Brissett is definitely one of the fallers in this group here. But as these players are falling in these middle rounds here, you can see that while there's been a little bit of movement in running back, this is where you went from two running backs in the past to three. So one rised up. I think that's Jonathan Brooks rising up right there, and then uh, Rachaad White rise. It looks like I don't know if Rachaad White went from here to here. Looks like we didn't gain one right here, so maybe Rachaad White's in this bucket here, something like that. But Jonathan Brooks, I'm pretty sure, is the one that's rising up right there. That's kind of squeezing things in on the running back side, and he's been one of my targets, and so that's probably why I'm feeling this the most and why I started to think about it more. And then wide receivers, you can see those kind of moving up the board as well. The top 36 wide receivers end at pick 76. Okay, so pick 76 is in the like seventh round. So you can see, there's actually some rise in the first bunch of rounds a little bit. Again, we knew that was happening about half a round, quarter of a round or so. But then here in round 8 is where we rise up again right here. And essentially everyone kind of went up a little bit, right? Round up, went up one. Probably player from there went up one. And then looks like there's a bit of a fall right here of some sorts. What's going on with this wide receiver market? I think a lot of this is like Josh Downs rising up a bunch. Is Michael Pittman rising up a bit on underdog? At least on DraftKings he is. Like Josh Downs, I think, is one of the ones driving that. So if you're like targeting players like Josh Downs or Jonathan Brooks, you're probably feeling this more than other people. And then at tight end's kind of been a little bit more static than the rest of the positions. A little bit of movement, but not a lot of movement. Let's go and see. We can see here on the left, we can kind of see what's happening a little bit more. So again, round 8 and round 9 have lost one QB. So we'll see if we can kind of figure that out a little bit. At QB, the other one would have been Dart probably, right? So these are all actually, I highlighted all of the quarterbacks. You can see a lot of them are falling. Almost all of them are falling. Only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 have risen or stayed pretty darn close to where they were before, with the rest of them falling. So the whole quarterback group as a whole essentially is kind of falling. And we said that it was which ones? Round 8 and 9, 8, 9, 12, and 14. So round 8 starts at pick 85. Let's see here. Who is falling down the boards? Looks like Trevor Lawrence has fallen into round 8. Is that what I said? 8? Let's see. One more time. So round 8 lost a quarterback too. So it looks like Trevor Lawrence has fallen into round 8. So what has gone on from there? So Jackson Dart fell out of round 8. He's in round 9 now. And maybe Bo Nix, 97.9. That's on the cusp, and he could have been like the last player in that round, just based. His ADP is a little bit higher, but that's in the last round. So like Jackson Dart, Bo Nix have fallen there. And then if you go down a little further, you can see that like Sam Darnold went from 134 to 142, so he's falling down around as well. So it looks like the entire group is moving a bit. And it looks like the main movement that's happening is there's just a little bit of shuffling here. Dart and Bo Nix are getting cheaper, basically, which is impacting all this over here. And like Sam Darnold down here is getting cheaper as well. And then we're losing again, like Jacoby Brissett from there because we don't know what's going on with him as a player. Where's Aaron Rodgers in this data as well? Baker Mayfield, he's been falling too. It looks like 114 to 118. Tyler Shuck, 114 to 121. Sam Darnold, yeah, 134 to 142. CJ Stroud's even been falling, which is kind of surprising. Bryce Young has seen a good fall, 150 to 156. Fernando Mendoza, as people realize he's not going to start, has been falling down the boards. And then Gino's had some legal issues. Aaron Rodgers is probably one of the risers. Let's see where. Here he is. He's 176 now. So he's now most likely in like round 15 is where he's at. Yeah, so round 15 gained a quarterback, and that's because Aaron Rodgers entered that one, and then maybe one of these guys fell down is to kind of take place like Jacoby Brissett or something like that. Now here's the thing though, I don't know exactly what to do with this data by itself. Like this isn't calling to me and saying this is how you should change your strategy a whole lot. I have some drafts to look at here that I think might represent what I've been trying to do. What I've been trying to do is, in a lot of drafts, I feel like is grab two earlier quarterbacks. Part of that reasoning is because the quarterbacks are all so high that might as well grab two good ones versus get ones that are a little inferior that are also that like are overpriced. Um, and I hope that's a good strategy because I've done that with a good amount of teams. I've also been studying other people's strategies and the Sims and things like that. And I've been grabbing a lot of early running backs as well. So I've been trying to grab like a number of running backs, but like four of them through 10 or something like that. Grab two quarterbacks through there as well. That leaves you four more picks after you get two quarterbacks and four running backs. And then it's like three wide receivers and a tight end or four wide receivers a lot of times. And with that strategy, maybe we should be questioning, or I should be questioning if I should keep on doing that, especially at the QB position. At running back, I think maybe it's saying you should continue to do that because the running backs aren't changing a whole lot except for this mid tier. I think a lot of that is because of Jonathan Brooks. Let's go take a look here. The running backs really quick. I just highlighted some that I kind of was interested that I liked that in this range. Not saying I'm taking all these players all the time, but ones that I liked. I feel like Rachaad White now has gotten too expensive from 122 to 110. Jonathan Brooks is more expensive, but I think he's still, could take that job and be a league winner at 105. So I still think he's a interesting pick. Maybe he's risen up today as well. I haven't looked at the data yet for today. But a lot of that is so yeah. So Rachaad White now at 110, he's running back 38. Jonathan Brooks, running back 37. Those are in that middle tier of running backs right there that are rising. In fact, he's right at the top of it, right? Running back 37, right? And he might pass up. Gainwell is also rising. J.K. Dobbins is staying static, falling just a tad. Blake Corum rising. So yeah, you can see that these guys are getting squeezed, and then like something like RJ Harvey's falling, common on guys falling. So these guys are kind of getting squeezed even more into one kind of group. Maybe Rachaad White or Aaron Jones will join that as well, but I'd say definitely from like RJ Harvey to Jonathan Brooks, they're kind of getting squeezed. Makes sense a little bit, right? RJ Harvey is the perceived starter, but in a three-headed committee with J.K. Dobbins, who's definitely a threat early. And then they have a threat later on in Coleman. And then Brooks is part of a two-headed committee and is definitely a threat to take over a bigger and bigger role later in the season and maybe just take over that role earlier than expected as well. Possibly. Not guaranteed, but possibly. So it makes sense why it's getting condensed right here. Anything else? Aaron Jones is rising up a lot. Then you got McCroskey Merritt falling. I'm surprised Mason's falling. That's an interesting one that I think take advantage of. Rodriguez is falling because of the injury. Tyron Tracy's rising. Mitchell is definitely rising. Pacheco's risen a bunch. There's Coleman. He's fallen just a tad. Charbonnet's fallen a bunch. He was kind of crazily priced to start. Algiers falling as well. And then it looks like everyone else is kind of staying. Not really. Sean Tucker rose a bunch as well. Alvin Kamara has risen as he's expected to play. But I feel like, yeah, you're getting more squeeze here. So the question is, at least for me, can I still do 4 running backs in the first 10 rounds, 2 QBs in the first 10 rounds, and does it still make sense or not? I got a couple drafts to look at here. And I guess this is the one that I got queued up first. And this is maybe an example of one, yeah, where I got 2 QBs early in this one. I went a little unique in this one just because I was getting so much of the 101 that I pulled up Zay Flowers to the 2-3 turn. And then that way I could take Lamar Jackson earlier to get a little unique. When I got to the round 6 here, there wasn't anything interesting to take. Not too interesting to take. So I took Jalen Hurts with Mekhi Lemon. I could have also pulled up one of these running backs if I wanted to, but I went Hurts Lemon for the stack. And then I got a falling Dowdle at 96, so I took it from there. One thing I've been playing with, and we'll pull it up here, is I've been playing with some draft capital calculations, taking charts that I think are, I don't know if they come from ETR or if someone else created them and ETR used them as well, but essentially trying to give values to all these players, draft capital values to all these players based on where they're being drafted to determine what is their draft capital score. And then looking at some older ETR data, which people still are using to make sense of their drafts to see if these make sense or not. So Lamar Jackson at pick 49. And then Jalen Hurts at pick 72. And this tells us that while it does seem expensive, I might not be doing the wrong thing at this is considered, maybe on the cusp of what is good, but I think it is just slightly over whatever the top value bucket was, but it was in the range, right? You don't want to get too cute with the data and get to the one, off by one, and therefore it's bad versus someone else. So this is kind of on the cusp of good draft capital allocation at quarterback, according to some of the ETR data that Leone had released, the manifesto combined with draft capital value per pick, which again, I don't know if that was created by ETRs or by someone else, but I kind of tried to replicate it. It might not be perfectly perfect, but it's pretty darn close. And that is decent value. So maybe I shouldn't feel bad that I've been doing this. Now, with some of these QBs starting to fall a bit, like Dart, like all of them, right? Like all of them are, with all the QBs starting to fall a bit, maybe it makes sense that I don't do the two quarterbacks early as often. And maybe I look at quarterbacks later instead as they're all kind of falling. If we look at another example, this is kind of the opposite. So we got here. Huh, that's not me. Where am I in this draft? Okay, I'm at the 5 spot. Okay, we're gonna look at that one last. We're gonna look at this one next. Okay, so this is one where I went a little bit later with QB. Why did I go later with the QB, and was it the right move or not? So I went all the way until round 9 for Jared Goff. And then I got Daniel Jones and Bryce Young as my quarterbacks. Why'd that happen? It happened because I got a Drake London, which I think that's around his ADP, maybe slightly falling. Drake London right there. I got a slightly falling Jeremiah Love. I got a slightly falling Tet McMillan. I could either grab a third running back from this tier or get a stacked Williams as like Waddle, Evans were already taken. I guess I went with Williams on this one. I got a Warren that was falling a bit here as my first tight end. And I grabbed Hubbard here, I guess, to stack with McMillan. I think we did talk about this one. And then I took Downs here as my, what, fourth wide receiver. So this one's a little bit, I had 3 running backs through 10. 3 running backs through 10. And okay, this is kind of interesting. So I took George Kittle here at 119. I thought that Aaron Jones or Jordan Mason would make it to 123. Neither of them did. Hindsight, looking at the team, I should have taken one of these running backs and then, saw what came back to me here with this pick. It could have been Casey Concepcion. I would have been fine with that. Coker for another Carolina guy would have been okay. Maybe Kittle makes it back to me. I think all those would make this team feel a little bit better. Possibly. I don't think it matters a whole lot though, right? Like construction wise, all season long, hopefully late season, maybe starts off strong early, but at least late season. And then hopefully Hubbard starts the season strong and then Love takes over as far as like the hammer for the weekly team. And then you got hopefully Hubbard doing something through the whole season on this team. And you got Mitchell. And then took Sampson here, who is a bring back on Daniel Jones. Okay. But with this one, let's take a look at the draft capital for this one. I'm in the 3rd pick. And I got Goff in, which pick was that? The 9th round. Pick 99. Is that where I took them? Let's see if I did. Yeah, I pulled up Goff a little bit to 99. And then Daniel Jones and Young at 142 for the start. So, where's Young? Okay. So apparently, looking at the draft capital buckets that were laid out in the manifesto that I was trying to like emulate a little bit here. This might not be on the greatest side as far as value goes. Now, this is what's interesting is 2 at 52 is fine. The third one at well, at 64 draft capital value is bad. This is probably like on the cusp of what would be, fine and bad here for this. So I don't feel horrible about it. I guess it's probably okay for the most part. And this maybe tells me to look at why it's okay with the 2, but bad with the 3, and then maybe continue to perfect what I'm doing here as I add it to my leverage lab. We're getting a sneak peek and practicing with it right now to see how it goes. But it looks like this is maybe where there's some benefits, right? If you get a QB somewhere in this range, whatever it is, and then you try to hammer home some of the rising values over here, like again, a Josh Downs or a Jonathan Brooks or whatever other, pick your flavor. And then you get 2 QBs later on, or even 1, right? It looks like even 1 would be fine. So if we again delete this, we should still feel okay if we get we could change Goff to, let's say we got Hurts right here at 75. That looks to be fine as well, right? Anyone in this range is fine as a potential 2 QB build. Watch, the buckets are like so specific that this will then be good or something like that. Oh, still fine like that. So I don't think I should feel bad. Where am I on here again? I don't think I should feel bad with Goff, Jones, Young, and this might become more viable. The thing is that I would probably prefer, based on how the teams are shaking out right now, I'd probably prefer to get a quarterback here because I'm not really in love with these picks in this range, depending on who you get. Get your quarterback here, and then instead of sometimes maybe grabbing 2 early because it looks like that's okay, at other times grabbing 1 or 2 more later on to go with that early one. Okay, there we go. I feel good about that. I think it vindicates a little bit what I'm doing over here in that, like, if we do like the players in like 8, 9, and 10, which I think we do, I highlighted a bunch of players in like around 8, 9, and 10 that I like, and I think there's a lot of them. If we go down here, we're looking at QB right now. Look at this. So there's so many players that are not QBs that are interesting picks around this time that I think if you can get your QBs early or later, I think you can maximize this window where I think there's a lot of value at these other positions too. And I don't think the value of QB is really there relative to the other positions in some cases, at least. Now, of course, how you build your team will depend on if you want to grab a QB in that range. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I think it's nice when you open up the ability to grab some of these other players that are maybe rising up the board and changing buckets and things like that. I got one more team to look at here. Let's see what that team looks like if it was this one here in the middle. I'm at the 4th pick, and I currently have Joe Burrow. And at 116, okay, I remember that. Yeah, at 116 here, you can see this one. This is similar to what I've been trying to do, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 running backs through 10, in this case through 9. And then I'm going to get a QB at 10, hopefully. The plan is to get Baker Mayfield here. So if I have like a Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield at 1, 2, 3, 4 at the 5th pick. And we have Joe Burrow at what pick here? Pick 68 and then 116. Joe Burrow. And then let's just say we grab Baker Mayfield right here. Okay, look at that. So that would be considered good. I should feel good with 2 QBs here. And it's nice to see that because again, I've been grabbing so many like two QBs up earlier that this feels weak and maybe it shouldn't feel weak. And so it's a good reminder for me too that I I'm good here. I could add in a third quarterback, I imagine. Let's say, for example, we add in a Geno Smith right here, or something like that. Yeah, we're still okay. Let's go up a round or two. Let's say it's Aaron Rodgers right here. This might be a little early, but yeah, okay. So if I want to, it opens up the ability for me to grab a second quarterback, but I should feel okay like this. I don't feel the greatest, but I should feel okay. Now, one thing I've been thinking about here, that I'm just thinking about like maybe a little bit more right now, is let's look at our buckets one more time. Okay. QB's 13 to 24, which start who's QB 13? That's Jackson Dart. Starts at pick 97. Mahomes is 11. Herbert. Lawrence there is 10. I do think still getting like two. Where did Lawrence go in this draft? Because I do like the idea of like this 6-7 and like two running backs. So, or two, sorry, um, two quarterbacks a little bit still. And it says that that's okay from it. Let's test another one, see if it's good from a draft capital point of view. So we got Joe Burrow here. And I kind of took Godwin here instead of Downs because I knew I needed the stack. I guess I could have stacked Downs with Daniel Jones as well. What I'm thinking is this Lemon pick. Like I like Lemon if you stack him up with Hurts. I took him here because he was falling a little bit, so he was like the ADP value. The running backs were all taken ahead of time. I kind of expect this to happen a little bit more based on kind of the rise in Pollard that's happening right now, where Lemon is the player that's available right here. Like Johnston is rising as well. And so Lemon's getting pushed down the boards probably a little bit. And I don't want to be stuck with Lemon here over and over again. It's hard to backstack. Well, you can backstack Prescott with at least one player. I do have Cam Scatabo here too, so you could give that as a reason to like backstack Prescott. Lawrence, I think, is interesting because you got lots of backstacking people at this point in time, at least. And then if you have someone like Rice, like once in a while, you could just pull up Herbert because Herbert just seems to never fall to here. You could pull up Herbert if you want to here, unless they start falling. Let's see what Prescott, Lawrence, and Herbert are doing. Are they rising or falling? Prescott, Herbert, and Lawrence. They're kind of in that first bucket, which was falling just a little bit. Okay, Herbert's rising. Look at that. Yeah, you're never going to get him falling. Prescott staying the same, falling just a tad. Lawrence falling like two picks. So I don't know if they're going to make it to where they're going to fall often. Like, I don't know if you want to rely on it to fall here to pick 92. On top of that, we're talking about like this pick here, which I don't like a lot. I don't love in Lemon. What if we did like Burrow and you could backstack Lawrence? So what if you did Burrow and Lawrence here instead? We're going to test that out. Burrow, let's get rid of Baker. We're going to say we take Trevor Lawrence here at pick 77. We're pulling him up, even though he's falling. Okay, look at that. That's still in the good bucket right there, it says. I'm intrigued with that. If you take Burrow here, you take Lawrence here, you can grab whatever you want here. You can grab whatever you want here. You can grab whatever you want. Where does Jacoby Myers go? Oh, right here. So you can grab Jacoby Myers at 101, or even if you miss out, you can see if he falls to 116, which I think is maybe possible. What's going on with Jakobi Meyers? Let's just look here since we got this open. He is falling. He's fallen 10 picks. He might still continue to fall, so that's something to maybe consider a little bit. But even if you miss out on Jakobi Meyers, it doesn't matter. You have Brenton Strange and Travis Hunter still to go after that. Okay. What's funny is I thought we'd go through this and talk about letting QBs fall further, and part of me is landing on pull QBs up. I don't think you want to do it every time, but I mean, look at, yeah, I got Tootin on this one. You go Burrow, Tootin, or you go Tootin, then Burrow, then Lawrence. Then you stop at two QBs, you hammer wide receivers, and one more running back, right? Four running backs, two QBs, four running backs. You get Strange and Hunter on this team or something like that, or Meyers and Strange, or Meyers and Hunter on the team. Why can't Meyers or Hunter be as good as Lemon? I think they can be. And then you just get a couple other tight, like you get in this case, maybe you get like Strange, Gesicki, and then Adams, like Andrews, like Andrews or Chig as a third tight end. You go three tight ends. Okay. There we go. I think that's where I'm gonna end it here. What did we find out? We found out that there might be some opportunity to grab one QB in this kind of like fun range right here where they're not changing a whole lot. I do think there's a good amount of value. And then waiting until later on to that pocket of QBs that are falling. Remember that pocket of QBs that are falling are right here, around 8, 9, all the way to like 12. So you can grab one or two depending on what you want here and you're okay. Or it is still, I mean, like, it's still probably not the worst thing if you think the QBs are great values up front to get those QBs earlier on. And maybe even pull up some QBs earlier on that you weren't expecting to pull up, especially if that gives you the flexibility to draft other players that you like more or equally as well a little bit later on. And so you're not forced to grab a QB in a place where a QB is something that maybe you don't want to do, something that you feel like you have to do. Okay. We didn't look at QBs much earlier in the season. And at that time, I think we did come to the conclusion that grabbing some of these quarterbacks naked when they fall to us was acceptable. But I think with how the market's going right now, I think we're coming to the conclusion that maybe grabbing a couple of these QBs ahead of ADP is also acceptable, depending on what your plans are for the second half of the draft. So, are the QB values dropping? They are a little bit. Now you know where, and maybe you got some of my thoughts. Let me know what you think. What are you doing? What are you doing differently? Am I drafting these teams totally wrong? I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. See you on the next one. Peace.